So we will start and we will get into it for the sake of the profile on you. We will start with asking you, what is your name and what do you do?
My name is Marcelino DaCosta. I'm known as Frost Flow. I'm an art educator and a professional artist for over 20 years.
Professional artist in the form of, do you paint? What is your primary subject when it comes to art?
Dance, writing, poetry, visual arts, music. Anything. Anything I touch, I like to create art with.
Have you always been into the dance and the hip-hop community? Like, when exactly did that sort of passion start?
I'd say it started around the age of 14. At the time I was starting to listen to a lot more hip-hop music. This was like in the mid-90s, early mid-90s. And older sibling and cousins and my friends at school were like really into hip-hop culture. A lot of them were older than I was, so it was already something that I was catching on to. And then by the time I was kind of finishing my 14th year, one of my closest friends, he passed away. And for me, I needed something to do, I needed people to chill with, and hip-hop was something that I kind of gravitated towards. Dancing specifically was something I grabbed onto, and then I didn't stop. I just kept going. 20 years later, a lot of things happened with it. But that's when I started dancing. It was in high school. I went to Phil Pocock in Mississauga, and I assembled a crew between Father Gates, Pocock, and Iona. And this crew from Mississauga had started in 98, 99, eventually started winning countless competitions in Toronto. So between 99 to 2003, Ground Illusions, the crew, ended up becoming one of Toronto's main crews and getting renowned reputation around Canada before the internet was very strong. So we're constantly competing, constantly winning, performing on television, like doing CBC performance with like Cardinal and Chaclair and Solitaire. Starting to get some more like profile and much music, doing things like Electric Circus and stuff like that. So yeah, it started off kind of like very humble state, and then eventually it grew, and then it really occupied my time in my life and my culture overall.
So you essentially helped put together your own crew, or was it like a friend sort of jumping in and saying, "Hey, I'm putting a crew together"? Like, how exactly did that come to be?
It was my group of friends and I, the friends that I had acquired after I lost my best friend. We were literally friends, and we knew that we wanted to have some goals through our dance. We wanted to battle some other crews that were local. One of the crews was in our high school, and there was a couple of other crews that we knew that were in Mississauga. So I was part of the original founding group. Myself, another guy named Fresh Effects, and Takashi Kuno, and a few others. We started the crew, and eventually we started just competing with it. So it was like a group of friends who we knew we wanted to start something. And over the last 20 years, this is our 20-year anniversary, I assumed leadership position in the crew, stayed as consistent as I could, and raised several generations throughout. So, Ground Illusions has had well over 50 dancers, artists overall, in the collective. It's a hip-hop art collective, and we're exclusive not only to dancers and breakers, but we also include MCs, writers, graffiti writers, DJs, beat makers, producers, artists of all sorts. And even within those realms of art practice through hip-hop, each of these art practitioners that are in this crew, everyone is professional in something else, whether they're engineers or journalists or professional illustrators or civil servants, family people. So Ground Illusions is not just a break dancing crew, it's a hip-hop collective, and I'm considered the founder. I am the founder, something I'm really proud of. And yeah, a group of friends had some ideas, and then things popped off. We stayed consistent with it, we trained it, we were very serious about it, we lived it.
So where did the name, because you said ground illusion?
Ground illusions, yeah.
Where did the name stem from?
So our original name was Overload, Overloaded Maneuvers, OLM, and the name changed after one of the original guys from OLM left, Arvin. He pieced out, and just to pursue other things, and it just didn't feel like the same crew. So after various name changes, we stumbled upon Ground Illusions by the guy who left, Arvin, and one of my neighborhood friends named Pan. They came up with that name Ground Illusions, and essentially what it stands for, what it means is, you could take it literally as, illusions on the ground, things that you see but you're not quite sure if they're real or not, tricking your eye, so to speak. But it's also a deeper subtext behind it, and it's a grounding illusion. So it's something that's realer than real. It's like fantasy made reality. So the illusion is grounded and it becomes actual fact, right? So that's what our crew represents and how we do it. And the 4 pillars of our crew is skill, commitment, desire, and creativity. So anyone who is in ground illusions, they admit those 4 qualities, and they represent those 4 qualities not only in their art but outside of their art.
What is it about dance that really speaks to you? Because that was sort of the thing that sort of brought you into the scene.
With dance, it's raw, it's unadulterated, it's real, it's all forms of expression are being put out through the movement. Things that you are imagining with your mind, things that you're feeling in your heart viscerally, things that you see in the world, and the stories that you tell, you can communicate them. And dance is the most powerful form of communication, in my opinion. Even before words were created and languages were founded and developed over time, it was physical movement, embodying and celebration through movement, or acknowledging through movement, stories through movement. That is our first and foundational mode of communication. So for me, dance has the power to change not only the world around us, but it changes reality, it changes opinions, it can change the temperature in the room, it can make people understand things they never understood before, it can make people feel things they never felt before, it can heal, it can educate, and it can settle conflict. There's so many things that dance can do. So for me, what gravitated me toward dance was the fact that I had a lot of angst and things that I need to get out, and for me, dance was the healthiest and the safest way to do it and still grow as a person. So I was getting fit mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, because I had a strong support network. And when you're part of a crew or a team like Ground Illusions, for example, and many others like us, it becomes like a family unit, a second family, a third family to some. It's like a gang without violence, right? And essentially, which is what hip-hop really was. It was something that was created organically and came out of the South Bronx, but it was a cry for social justice. It was meant to break free of oppression. So all of us have some type of oppression, whether people are of a visual minority or a culture, or they're oppressed by their own mental health or physical capabilities or otherwise, right? Dance has been, to me, in my experience traveling across Canada, across the world for 20 years, advocating for this dance has been one of the things that has brought so many people together. I've seen miraculous things happen through the cultivation of dance. So I started to notice these things as I was doing it, and man, it's just fun. It's fun as ever, man. Like you can be yourself. The whole idea is to be you, and be proud of who you are, where you're from, where your culture is, what you believe, understanding your environment. So all those things I started to discover in my journey of growing through dance, and is what's kept me in with it. There's a lot of sacrifices. Stuff like this dance, for example, is a kind of thing that if you're not practicing it consistently, your muscles and your synaptic connections, they atrophy, they start to go away. So to maintain a high level of performance and breaking, you have to be committed on a lifestyle. And that's something that people don't really understand when they're not doing the dance. So if you see somebody doing this dance at a high level, recognize that they're putting hours and years, sometimes equivalent or more so than to someone who is considered a doctor certified, right? So yeah, it's just something that doesn't end, you know, it's like constantly growing and building, and you can never be the best, you can only be your best, and you've got to keep chasing that. So this aspect of challenge and growth has been big topics in my love of dance, you know? And this is a love, you have to love it.
And that's what you communicate when you dance as well, like you show your growth as a person? Like what are some of the subjects that you focus on when you dance now?
Oh,
as
totally.
Opposed to...
So the music that we dance to, and I say we, you know, people in my community, like breakers, b-boys, b-girls, breakers, we're dancing to funk, you know, soul music, hip-hop music, usually hip-hop that's kind of represents more like the 90s era, you know, 80s, 90s, you know, some of the early 2000s. I say specifically those eras because the kind of rhythms, the syncopated rhythms, and the machines that were made to make those rhythms were still in line with the original James Brown sound, the funk sound, the drum, right? So that's the sound that we dance to, the drum that we dance to. So a lot of stuff that's coming out now that is, you know, quote unquote hip hop in the mainstream doesn't have the same type of rhythms. So I don't even consider it hip hop. It's pop music now, right? Taking the qualities of rap, taking the qualities of hip hop culture, and manifesting something different. You know what I mean? But for me, when I'm dancing, I'm communicating my passion for and love for the music. I'm communicating my own personal story, the things that I love, the things that I dislike, the things that I hate, the things that turn me on, the things that drive me to inspiration, the things that enlighten me, the things that make me concerned, all sorts of subjects. I'm evoking a sound and an essence that is way older than me. I'm evoking something that has come through the musicians that have pressed something maybe 1973 to maybe something that is like thousands of years old, right? So there's tons of things that I'm communicating through the dance, a sense of play, fun, and who I am as a Canadian. You know, my experience culturally as a Canadian, being, you know, born here on Turtle Island, you know, raised in Toronto, Mississauga, but of Portuguese blood, Azorean heritage, and you know, having an affinity with Japan. My wife's Japanese, and so on and so forth. So yeah, all those things are coming out through my dance: skill, commitment, desire, creativity, all of them.
You mentioned the linguistics of dance. When I first met you actually at the Seven Samurai competition, I spoke to you when everything was sort of away, and I asked you, you know, what goes into being able to judge all these different performers, and you said that dance is a language.
Right.
And so, could you possibly sort of elaborate a little bit further maybe into that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like any language, there's a foundational, you know, codex or alphabet or, you know, syllabic, something that identifies key markers that, you know, encapsulate the aesthetic of that language, right? The way that it sounds, the way that it feels, the tone, the, you know, texture, the timing, the rhythm, and dance is no different. And specifically to breaking, you know, the main formula in breaking is we're dancing on top, on our feet, the top rock, intended to get on the ground, which has been inspired by the rock dance from the 70s, which came out of, like, you know, grooving and rock and soul music and, you know, civil rights movement, empowerment, and people from the African diasporic, you know, culture moving their bodies a certain way, you know, moving the core, rocking to syncopated rhythm. So that's part of the language, is the groove, the feeling, the rock, the bounce, the swing. And then, you know, us dancing on top, in the top rock, with strides and with a swing and with an attack as intended to get on the ground. And our dance was formed through the looping of break sections in funk music. So a break section that's maybe 8 seconds long, 5 seconds long. DJs like DJ Kool Herc, for example, and many others after him, like Grandmaster Flash and so on and so forth. These gentlemen, they looped the breaks with 2 turntables over and over again. And that was the birth of hip-hop music. And hence, the language of hip-hop movement started to evolve. So no longer were people just rocking on the top, they started dropping on the ground and rocking on the bottom too, rocking on the floor. And it was primarily, Black, Jamaican, Hispanic, like Puerto Rican, Dominican communities in the Bronx who were starting to really get down on the ground. And the movements, the vocabulary on the ground is a mix of many different things and cultures, like from mambo to fancy dance, native dancing, even top rock, like grass dance, to kung fu, to all sorts of things, Russian dancing, right, and so forth. So all these little kicks and turns and spins and sweeps and leg work and balancing. They're all part of a vocabulary that happened organically, like any language. There was, out of necessity, there was a need to express certain things, and as the dance grew in its scope and more people were getting involved with it, then the scale and the range of what was to be expressed started to grow as well. So no longer were people just dancing on their feet and then touching the floor on their hands and feet and knees. Now they're going on their backs. Now they're going on their heads. Now they're going on their forearms. Now they're learning how to spin faster. Now they're learning how to combine movements together across the dimensions up and down. So the dance no longer, was just a sporadic, or maybe it was like a bouncy, rocking thing. It was that, but then it was so much more, and it evolved to like a spherical movement that's expanding and contracting, with tons of characterization, something that's larger than life. So all the aspects that are technical in nature are part of the vocabulary in this language, but also the approach, the mentality of how you approach the dance, what you can do with it, the playing with creativity and having to be innovative and problem solve on the ground and still have grace and still have a good touch. That's all part of the vocabulary as well. The knowledge and etiquette of when you get on the floor or when you're battling somebody, what to do, what not to do, how you compose yourself, how you walk, how you talk, how you dress. It's a whole culture in itself. Because when you look at culture, and I'm kind of referencing a dancer from Germany by the name of Storm. You mentioned culture. It's to cultivate, to grow something, right? And that's what we do with the dance. And in the process of cultivating your mentality and practicing it, and really the music is key. Listening to the music of where it came from, the late jazz, jazz in the early 70s, like the way that technology was changing the music and the way the music started sounding in the 80s with the 808 drum machines and so forth, and then moving to New Jack Swing and understanding the foundation of how the music rolls is definitely part of the foundation and understanding the vocabulary, because you're learning how to rock your movements, you're learning about the gestures, you're learning about when to do things and what has been done and what hasn't been done. How do you contribute to the canon of what's happening? That's all part of understanding the vocabulary and overall understanding the language of the dance. And it's something that is progressive. It's something that you can't just, it's kind of like, we're learning English all the time. If you're in Canada, and you've been born and raised in Canada, chances are you speak in English or French. And even still, to the age of 50, you're still like learning your own language, right? So this dance is very much like that. Although I've been dancing 20 years, I'm still a student. I'm still sometimes a beginner and relearning things all over again. And, forgetting things that I've created and recreating things as an artist. So.
I just want to check to make sure, because this is a new memory card, and I just want to make sure that it is still cool. We are rocking into the 20-minute mark. Good. So you brought up the connection between a lot of different styles that go into hip-hop, such as mambo, swing, and you also mentioned kung fu. With the Seven Samurai dance competition, could you possibly elaborate further on that connection between martial arts and the breaking scene?
Yeah, well, the idea of Seven Samurai happening, we started it last year. So my company, Full Step Sauga, in collaboration with the Living Arts Center, we produced Seven Samurai as an idea through Gadfly. Gadfly was the group that, they got a grant to perform inside LAC, and they did their performance, their street dance theater performance, based off of Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai film. So in doing that, Claudia and myself at the LAC were like, why don't we play with the concept, because we're going to be collaborating with Gadfly to expand this day and make it more of like a festival rather than just like a street dance performance day. And then, I came up with the idea of incorporating Seven Samurai as a grueling contest that would, seek out of all the warriors in the room, the dancers who are warriors, and find the top 7 to compete for the main prize, which is a katana blade. It's a sword. How it's relevant to our dance and our culture is that, like martial arts, you're cultivating, you learning a lot about yourself through cultivation, and you're connecting with other people. And it's not just, from face value, people look at martial arts and they think it's just about beating people up, but that's not what it's about at all, right? Same thing with hip hop. It's not just about, what people take it face value for, preconceived notions and stereotypes that are perpetuated. There's a lot more behind what it takes to cultivate the culture of hip hop and make it part of your life and your lifestyle. And the way that a lot of dancers go about it is just like a martial arts. It's just like a warrior. You're disciplining yourself on a high level, and then when it comes time to perform in the battle context, it's like a real battle. The results are different. Some people are both still alive, but at the end of the day, the type of adrenaline that you're getting and the type of energy and connection that you have to have holistically to perform your best in that type of scenario for a battle is as if it was like a samurai, as if you're a martial artist in combat. So there's definitely many commonalities and a lot of early breakers, not only from the Bronx in the time of when it started, but even going throughout from the inception till now. Kung Fu is a big inspiration to many people, and even to this day, I watch Seven Deadly Venoms, or I watch Kung Fu flicks by Bruce Lee, and get a lot of inspiration by the movement. Even the concepts and the styles within Kung Fu, for example, like Tiger Style and Crane and all of that, like the themes, the conceptual nature of drawing influence from nature in itself and incorporating it into the movement is a very, to this day, is a very contemporary notion. It's how we draw upon inspiration and create something. So breaking is no different than that. You have a lot of different people and different cultures and a diverse amount of people getting inspired by everything in life to create material on a constant basis. And that's what's so unique about breaking, is that everyone around the world does it, and everyone does it different. There is a base foundation in the language, but someone in Canada is going to look different than someone in Japan. It's going to look different from someone in South Africa. It's going to look different from someone in Morocco, or in Mexico. They're all going to have difference, but at the same time, there are very common threads that bind people together. So hip hop in essence is like world peace. It brings many people of different cultures together, speaking the same language, if not verbally, physically, or through their art, or through the music in itself. And I think that's one of the first times in history where you're seeing that many different types of people coming together and getting along with anything, and still allowed and encouraged to be themselves. So
the one thing that, because once again, I'm familiar with the hip hop scene, but this was actually the first time I've been to a break competition.
Right.
And one of the things that I was sort of sitting there was how respectfully you guys were in regards to entering the Cypher, which is sort of like the area in which you perform, the space that you break in. Can you possibly sort of explain what exactly the Cypher means to performers that are in the scene, and also for those that have no idea what the heck I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So the Cypher, or the circle, firstly, that is like we're going back into time, right? Traditional, cultural, tribal time, communicating in circles, so everyone's equal, everyone has quorum, everyone has like their opinion, they're able to share it. That's what the Cypher is. When we dance, it's a big part of what we do. Nowadays, in hip-hop culture and breaking, specific to breaking and all the funk styles and all the street dance styles related to kind of hip-hop culture, there's a lot of competitions now. And the competitions don't necessarily require people to be dancing in ciphers, but that is like part of essence of what we do is the Cypher. The dance was created in the Cypher naturally. It's organic conversation between people going back and forth, whether it's an exchange or whether it's a straight up battle or just sharing or connecting. The Cypher is very significant because it allows for that flow of energy to be cyclical and to be passed back and forth. So the momentum of conversation it keeps going, right? So that's why it's relevant. That's why it's very important. It's the seeding ground and essence of how we do our dance, and it's connected to how we are as human beings. You know, how we relate with each other as human beings, and how we can connect in a manner that is equal. Because the circle is equal, as opposed to European systems where one person is in the front and everyone else has to follow them, right? So when we dance, we go by that natural system, and it happens organically. And you know, there is etiquette as well. Some people don't necessarily know the etiquette of ciphers. Sometimes people are dancing in conversations that isn't relevant to their own voice. You know, like they'll start kind of contributing their voice to a conversation or a debate that's happening in a circle, and it's like the wrong time and place. Kind of like, you know, someone comes into the party, and the party is kind of a quiet party. Someone comes in really loud, it disturbs the party, you know? It's like, you know, it's cool to be yourself, just find a different circle to be in where you can be loud in, you know? Or if someone wants to be, you know, I guess you get my point.
Yeah, read the room.
Read the room. So ciphers, there's many in the Seven Samurai event, and Street Poetry Jam. We had several ciphers, and the concept was, I want you all to cipher for 30 to 40 minutes. And then the judges that we had, Crazy Smooth, Yvon Soblo from Ottawa, and we had Lady C, Caroline. She's from Calgary, she's there, an amazing street dancer. And then we also have, Mariano Obarca, Glizai from Baggy Tricks in Toronto, and he's also Mississauga resident now. They were all kind of going around and picking the top 7 out of like 60 people in the room dancing, various styles. So there wasn't just breakers, there was people who were popping, or people who were locking, or people who were, you know, doing more like a hip-hop stand-up kind of style of dance. People were doing fusion, mixing different styles together. And then the result was a top 7. Like much like the first year, the second year was the same thing. What was unique is that we had a couple of legends dancing at the jam who are very credible and who have put a lot down in the hip-hop community internationally for a lot of people since the 90s. So they came to the jam too. So it was like a big honor and privilege to watch them dance, like Gizmo and Negus and stuff like that. It was really awesome to see them participate. So yeah, the Cypher is definitely there's etiquette involved, you know. Sometimes people can get really too aggressive in the Cypher. Sometimes it's intimidating for people to go into the Cypher, but the Cypher that's your trial, you know. Different types of ciphers can exist, but it's often a trial for people because, you know, you're independent, you're going in by yourself, you're throwing down, and there's only you, the music, and the floor, and then you really see how people perform a level of high pressure, dancing on their own. You have to deliver not only the things that they have preset and considered as part of their overall material that makes up their art practice and their experience, but also to be freestyling in the moment, in unison with the DJ who's spinning whatever he or she decides to play. So there's like a lot of synergy that's happening all over the room between the person creating the musical experience to the people who are dancing in that space and what they're feeling and evoking at that time, to how they're connecting with each other, the types of conversations are happening in different circles. So it's extremely dynamic space. It's very thrilling, it's very exciting. It can be very also intimidating. It can be like full of all types of emotions, like really hard ones, really sad ones, really fun ones, very joyous ones, very celebratory ones. Like the whole world is happening, all in that space.
What do you feel it means to be a b-boy or a b-girl for those that might be sort of interested in getting into the scene, or what does it speak to you?
It's a good question. What does it mean to me? It means being free. It means learning how to be free and learning how to be yourself. Like learning really how to express yourself as yourself and growing along with that. So being a b-boy or b-girl is, you know, respecting the true essence of hip-hop culture, preserving the tradition of it, and at the same time contributing something to take it forward. Being a b-boy and a b-girl means representing art practice in a way that is progressive and at the same time respects tradition. What it means to me is someone who is highly disciplined and likes to be creative and have fun and is open-minded type of person who is, if you're the kind of person who likes to draw, who likes to write, who likes different cultures, who is, fights against oppression, someone who fights against racism, someone who loves, and appreciates people in general, someone who loves to create and take ownership and be empowered. That's what being a b-boy or b-girl means. Your b-boys and b-girls are preservers of culture and they're urban warriors. That's what they are.
One of the things that I wanted to ask, so this is the second year that you've run the Seven Samurai competition.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that you sort of learn as you go along when you're doing events and things like that. What do you feel that you have personally learned doing the second year as opposed to when you were just starting out with the first?
Oh, okay. I learned that, because the second year was 3 times bigger than the first year, which is great, and myself and Claudia from LAC, we produced the whole thing ourselves, I did all the flyers, I did, 85% of the marketing on all of that, booked all the artists, did all the tech schedule, I was pretty much like a one-man band, and, Claudia was right there on the administrative end to make sure that I was on point, keeping it. And, I've been throwing events for 15 years, so I'm comfortable in this scenario and I really love it. It's something I have a vision for. But what I learned this year is more like when we're going on that scale and there's a lot of things happening, there's a lot of stuff popping off of the jam. There was a theater performance and a whole foyer atrium section and workshops in another space and theater screening in another space and then turning over the RBC theater once all that stuff was finished and returning to the RBC theater for the actual battle. And I learned that, next year I want to have, make sure I have a nice volunteer coordinator that's set in a position, the role, and making sure that people are taking you seriously when you say be there at a certain time, and there's no exceptions to that, because sometimes people are loose with that, but thinking they can kind of like come in whatever time they feel like it, and that jeopardizes the whole production, because it's a production, it's an experience, it's a show, So I learned definitely I want to make sure that I have a volunteer coordinator and kind of have them really prepped. But what else? What else did I learn? I don't know if I learned that much. I think it's more reaffirming and co-signing and kind of reevaluating things that I've done before in the past and overall I think next year I want to bring back tape with numbers. This year we took that out. So the first year when we had all the competitors come into the space, they all signed up and they were given a number. And the number was pasted on them, so the judges would go around and record the numbers of the ones that they like. This year I experimented and I tried to get rid of the whole number system. Even though I knew that there's 60 dancers, I wanted the judges to be very picky about who is absolutely standing out in their mind, and then have a conversation afterwards and be like, yeah, we know there's a lot of dancers here, but these people still are on my mind the most. And it still worked. It was more work for them, but I trust their opinion, right? I think next year I may bring back the number system just to make it a little bit easier for the judges. But yeah. What else did I learn? That you bring a nice headliner in, you bring someone who has a lot of appeal, or they have a lot of credibility. You may get more people, yes, but it's not that which brings people out. It's total conviction in the process of leading up to the jam and producing the event and making it as accessible and as fair for people as possible. So if people are coming to a space, they have to understand the value of what they're getting going into that space. If they're going to pay, because the price was supposed to be $25, but because we got a grant through Canadian Heritage, which we were like really grateful for. We got it 5 days before the jam, so we had to spend that grant and set and arrange it. So one of the things we were able to do was, you know, make the jam free for everybody, which was a blessing, because, you know, $25 is a lot of money, but for what you're getting, it's still a great deal. You're getting a whole theater performance for 1 hour, you're getting free workshops, you're getting free concert, and you get to witness like a whole battle, participate in it for cash prize. Like, it's pretty good still. But overall, it's really leading up in promotion and the kind of culture that you're building representing the event. I think that was reaffirmed to me in the learning process of this event, was the right type of people helping. And you know, when you're working with artists, you're going to work with people who, you know, you like and you trust. And even though you like and you trust certain people, sometimes people in different times of their life are not always on point. In which case, you know, you kind of put them on the shelf, or you honestly tell them what's up, and hopefully if they improve in their professionalism, you can bring them back on board. But ultimately, another thing that I've learned is, like, you know, you want to keep the jam successful, regardless of the people that you know. You're always looking for those people in general that, you know, they're gonna play with the team's rules, because they want the overall thing to be a success, and it's not just about them, it's about the whole production, right? For the people who are participating and experiencing the event, and the people who are putting it on, and everyone who's working is, you know, out of all the years that I've done events for 15 years, I always have the production team, and a lot of the artists try to kind of like huddle before, and we get in the same space before, and we get in the right mind state, and we're like, all right, this is what we're going to do today. We're all here together, we're going to put on a show for people, we're going to create this experience for people. You may be a judge of them, you may be, you know, like making the music for them, you may be teaching them, you may be emceeing and hosting them, but all of us are on the same frequency, on the same wavelength. And often that's always worked with my events, and people can tell the difference when they come to an event that I produce. They really see that things are really cohesive, and they're, you know, 90% of the time they're on time, or if they go off time, they end up being on time by the end. Like, we find a way to make it really, like, good for people, and I take that very seriously, because I'm a big fan of concerts, I'm a big fan of jams and events, and I like to make sure that there's something for everybody. And you know, those are the things that I notice when I go to jams. You know, if I want to bring, you know, my wife, or if I'm bringing family or somebody to the space, I want to make sure that they're entertained, and I want to make sure people are learning things in events and they're experiencing stuff that they're never going to forget. So I think this jam I've learned from the first year is more about those qualities, is more about, like, you know, getting more people in the space and how that's done, getting more opportunities for the right type of people to be doing things, or, you know, finding the right manner in which people can be supportive of what it is that you're doing, how you can kind of different ways in which you can barter exchanges between, you know, assistance and you know, pay, you know, and all of that overall. So yeah, but for the most part, like, pretty much got a handle on things like events so far, with the kind of scale of events that I'm doing. And this jam, I think, had like almost 400 people throughout the afternoon, which was really sick, man. It was great. So
When it comes to, because you've been doing event hosting for so many years, but
Yeah.
not only were you hosting the event, you also mentioned how you were doing stuff such as the marketing and promotion of it.
Yeah.
How do you prevent burnout? Because I've been a part of the event scene, and when it comes like a couple days before, everybody has their head in their hands going, the world is on fire, please help.
You know, it's a good question, and I think that I've been very successful at avoiding a lot of those things, regardless of some challenges that have been in my way. I mean, on one hand, I've been in situations where, like, graciously, we received, like, you know, a good amount of funding right before the jam, 5 days, but that's pressure. That's like, you need to spend this money or else you're screwed. And I really give it up to my training as a b-boy, as a breaker, because when it comes down to those pressure situations, I love them. I'm like, oh really? Only 5 days? Okay, let's do it, let's kill it. Now I'm in the final round. Now I'm in the overtime round. You know, I got the stamina, let's go. My will, my determination, my conviction is unstoppable. So I learned that from my dance. And a lot of people don't necessarily have that. And if they do have that, I I find that people allow themselves to get, there's a lack of faith that comes along with not only with themselves but with the people around them. And I've developed quite a bit of trust with my own abilities and humility to know when I don't know something, to be able to trust other people to handle those things for me. And I make sure that, you know, I try my best to have the core people that are involved with what I do as my allies who I trust very well, and to be very competent in what it is that they're doing. So what I either have, like, you know, my man Testament on as an MC. If I'm not, I don't need to supervise that brother. He goes and he does his thing, and I know he's gonna do it well, and we're all on the same wavelength anyway. It's like if, you know, I wasn't there, he might as well be there because we're saying the same word, you know? Or I got my man's Creators at Play, or my homie Lifted. Like, we're all on the same wavelength. So I think it's important to have a team that's you can rely on, and everyone's on the same page, and making sure that your critical path leading up to the event is making the workload digestible. So if I know I gotta make all the videos, I gotta produce the flyer, I gotta book all the artists, I gotta do all the budgeting, I gotta do the whole tech schedule, I gotta make sure everything's proper, I'm not gonna do that 2 weeks before. I'm gonna do that months before and do a little bit at a time, like a school project, you know. And by the time you know, like this last year, it was literally 2 days before the jam, and I was feeling kind of anxious. And it's not because I was worried about the things I had to do. It was like, I feel like I'm not doing enough. I already have everything covered, but I'm like, I'm kind of worried because shouldn't I be like scrambling around? No, because I prepared it, you know. And then when the time came for me to do it, there was little moments where, because I gave myself buffer times throughout the jam, I was able to kind of compensate if things didn't go well, or if there was like a problem that needed to get sorted out, you know. But that comes with experience. That's 15 years of experience of doing events, you know, scheduling things in accordance with hypotheticals, you know, having contingency plans. You gotta have a plan A, B, and C. If this is not working, boom, cut to plan B. Cut to plan C, the show must go on. How do you make it so that things in the jam, you know, look spontaneous, but they weren't spontaneous, they're actually meant to happen that way? Or how do you make it so that if something spontaneous happens that you didn't plan, still make it seem like it was part of the program and make it work out, right? So this is those things. I think this last year, but you're always going to make little hiccups and mistakes. I mean, this last year, like, we didn't get a picture of all the seven samurai together, which is something in the first year that we were able to do. But this year we weren't, because, like, you know, time was like winding down. You know, everyone was exhausted from like a long day, you know, and all of that. But overall, there was a lot of other beneficial things that happened as well. You know, there was enough time for the MCs to get live on the open mic during the atrium section, and last year they weren't. The time was very cut short. It was like 10 minutes. So, you know, there's always things that you can give or take. Next year we're going to do the jam again. Thinking of the concepts, I'm keeping that kind of top secret for now. Although I do have an idea in my head about what I want to do. It's going to be like it's a trilogy, right? And hopefully more thereafter. But it's more kind of amalgamating all the lessons from the first 2 years, and, you know, kind of putting them together to see what worked best and what didn't work as well, and, you know, get more people in there and do something that could spark a nice tradition in the city, because the city is growing. You know, I saw a little bit about the cultural master plan, you know, for this coming year, and, you know, what Mississauga is planning over the next 5-10 years. Our city is going to be the place to be. It is the place to be. You know, people really know what's up. They're going to know the city is where you need to be. You know, film and television, and, you know, creative industry and business, and like Mississauga is going to be where it's at. People are going to start talking about Mississauga more than Toronto, guaranteed. Guaranteed. It's like almost a no-brainer. Like, if you're in economics, you know, but everyone else is trying to catch up, you know. Or if you're an artist, you know, you're like, I see things are coming around. Community development is a slow process. You know, it's 101. It's going to happen over years. It's not an overnight thing. And people like myself and other people who are either older than me or a little bit younger than me, like, they were raised in the city and really care. And even the younger generation start to appreciate the city. So hopefully, you know, they're going to kind of find ways to make initiative and do things and appreciate, you know, events and programming and stuff that's put in play. Because when they're able to do that, then they can evaluate it and find maybe better ways to do it. you know, for later on. Because stuff like this wasn't happening when I was in the city 20 years ago. It wasn't, which is why, you know, I spent a lot of the time investing to make it happen, right? Because I wanted to see it when I was a kid. Yeah. Things are very easily accessible though in general, and there's like a double-edged sword. Attention spans are shorter, things are more free, you know, there's all these options, and it's a hard time to be like a youth in the world today. You know, it's hard because you're bombarded with all kinds of stuff, and you don't know what's real or what's not sometimes. And although now hip-hop is a lot more accessible, sometimes I kind of wish that it wasn't. Because people like myself, we thrive because we were like itching to learn about it, as opposed to having it. Maybe if it was on a silver platter in front of me, maybe I wouldn't have grabbed it as the way that I did, right? So it's about finding the right type of balance, and I think this event has a good balance. It's a once-a-year type of thing. It's a celebratory thing, and it empowers the people in the community who have really been there, and people who want to get involved in this type of thing, and encourage their, you know, not only their artistic practice, but their practice as a citizen, you know?
So one of the things that I'm trying to remember from earlier in the conversation, you got your start, well, you were raised on Turtle Island, and you were sort of going all around. So did you break outside of Canada, going into the States, or where has breaking taken you?
It's taken me all over. It's taken me all across the United States, you know, from New York to LA to, you know, Orlando to Houston to Boston to Virginia. You know, I've been all across Canada. I've been east to west in Canada, up to Nunavut and back, you know, Northwest Territories, Yukon, like almost every province and territory I've been through, almost every major city, Canada. I visit Japan quite frequently, like at least 6 times in my life. Korea as well. You know, dancing's taken me to the UK, it's taken me to Paris, taken me to Holland, you know, like France, Holland. Where else is it taking me? It's all over, man.
What was your first tour like?
My first tour?
Yeah.
Well, the first tour that I remember having was like a local one, and that was with Meja One, with an MC. She's from Vancouver and from Singapore, and lived in Toronto for a while, and it was like a string of shows that we had done like locally. But I'd say I could see my first tour going around, like getting on a plane and moving around, was with Blueprint for Life. It's a social work consulting company, or the not-for-profit is called Blueprint Pathways. And with this company, headed by Buddha from Canadian Floor Masters, is like a first generation Canadian b-boy from the early 80s. And he started a social work company and brought myself and other top educators in the country to work in remote communities all across Canada. So working like exclusively in Nunavut, Northwest Territories, and Yukon. So my tours were they're like a week long at a time. So I go out for a week, go out for 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks, hit different communities, work with the youth, like maybe 100 youth at once for a whole week, and then, you know, produce a show with them by the end. So the touring was kind of in that realm. Very exciting, seeing a lot of the country, hearing a lot of stories, a lot of beautiful ones, a lot of tragic ones, reflecting on myself as a Canadian, what that means, reflecting on, you know, my life in general, and what I do as an art practitioner, you know, like getting paid for doing what I'm doing at the same time going to university. So touring was kind of like a relief, and at the same time it was very enriching and taxing all at once. So it was just a beautiful growing experience. Touring in prison, doing prison work in young offender centers across the country. Sometimes, you know, hitting a young offender center like 1 week and then going home for another week and then going to another one, or going back-to-back communities and going like Edmonton or Calgary or Winnipeg. That's very, like, you know, it's heavy work, it's very tiring work. So tours, you feel like you're in band, you're in a band, and you're with people, and you know, you get fed up with people, they get fed up with you, you know, but you love each other and you believe in what you're doing and you get along and you make it happen. Touring Japan, that was a great experience for me. I toured across the country 3.5 years ago, and learning about the way to teach in Japan, the way to communicate in Japan, not only just because of language, but like a lot of nuances and things you say, things you don't say, how people digest information, how people just work together, constructing things in Japan, processes and programming, events in general is very different than here. People have a different way of thinking about how to execute things. So good learning experience. So those are some of the tours and experiences that I've been on. Learned a lot from those experiences. Always ultimately fun. I love being on planes. I love traveling to other destinations and other places. And a lot of the places that I've traveled throughout my life is always, I've had an opportunity to be entrenched within the culture. I seldomly go as a tourist. Once in a while I'll go somewhere as a tourist, but it's always, I go somewhere, and fortunately for me, I have people who are locals who are taking me places. I'm sleeping on couches or getting, hooked up with a room or a bed somewhere, and immersed in language and immersed in ways of being, right? And to me, that is such a blessing, and it's priceless experience and priceless, knowledge and wisdom.
Are you someone who has a hard time unplugging? Like you mentioned before, it's like you're glad that you were able to go and you were able to do all these other things, being able to crash on other people's couches, rarely going as a tourist, and sort of just taking it all in. Are you one of those people that needs an objective, or are you okay with being able to unplug and just take it all in around you?
I feel like when I go away to these types of trips, I know how to do both. I know how to go to these places and heal myself and rejuvenate myself, because I have a lot of alone time, even though I'm with people. There's like time for like privacy and reflection and being reflective and reflexive, like applying the lessons that I've learned, right? And I feel like when I have to do a lot of these responsibilities, my lifestyle is a lot more regulated. When I'm here, living as an artist, professionally as an art educator, my schedule is not a 9 to 5, it's a 24/7. It's from the moment some days I'll wake up super late, some days I'll wake up mad early. It fluctuates, it goes from time to time. So when I'm on tour, schedules are a lot more regulated. So I like that. I like, people think, are you like 9 to 5 schedule? I'm like, yeah, I do. Like, I know how to do that. It's cool to me, because I know about consistent growth, and I know about regimen, I know about discipline. So I appreciate that about trips. Things are a lot more like regimented, and like timing is very like, you have to value time a certain way. Not to say that I don't value time when I'm home, but when I'm home I feel like I'm in kind of like a hyperbolic chamber. Like I'm tunnel vision with the things that I have to do, and I'm focused on it, and plugging dates and executing things and all kinds of stuff. But no one day is the same at home, which can be exciting, but it can also be a stressor as well. Because you're like, okay, how am I going to eat? How am I going to make money? How am I going to survive? How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay my bills? Just like everybody else. But I don't have the security, or I haven't had the security of like, oh yeah, just go work and you gotta be there 9 to 5, and I'm getting my pension and all my other stuff. I don't have that, right? I haven't had that, which is something that I want now. But overall, I think the unplugging part, I try to savor the times when I go away and I unplug there. But I believe that like wherever you can go as far away in the world as you can. Everything inside you will always be inside you. It will follow you. So some people say they want to have a vacation and they have to go away. Everything that you're concerned about is inside you, and maybe it's out of sight, out of mind. But for someone like me who reflects a lot and I'm a thinker, it doesn't matter where I go. Like I always have the things that are like, the things that make me happy are still on my mind. The things that make me concerned are still on my mind. It's just more the environment changes and the people change around me. So that gives me different perspectives to look at subject matter, I like being on planes, as I mentioned earlier, because I can write. I write a lot of poetry when I'm in transit. When I'm traveling without moving is when I like to write. And overall, I would love to go to, like Mexico or something and just chill on a beach. If I go back home to San Miguel and the Azores, I'm doing like vacation stuff. I'm on the beach, I'm not thinking about anything work related, but that's rare for me because of my lifestyle. I always have projects on my mind. I'm always trying to create something. I'm always thinking about something. So, you know, in Mississauga, I'll go to the Credit River on a weekend, take a whole Sunday, just disappear, go Credit River, you know, just eat mad vegetables or something and a lot of water, and that's my vacation, you know.
So, how did teaching eventually come into the fray? Because this is your studio, you have classes. At what point did you go from I want to just break to I want to be able to teach others how to break?
Good question. So I went to Sheridan College in Oakville to do visual arts or art foundations.
Trafalgar or Davis?
Trafalgar. That's the art campus. I love that school. It's forever my school. And I love the community and the people there. And I was, you know, before dancing, I never even thought about dancing when I was a kid. When I was a youth, the only thing I wanted to do was draw. Draw, play video games, work in film, video. That's the only thing I wanted to do. Dancing was the furthest thing from my mind. Although I always admired it, you know. Grew up watching, you know, dancers and stuff. And like I said, I have a big generation gap. I have like an older sibling, older sister, and a lot of older cousins. So I grew up and listening to a lot of music and being in house parties at the age of 8 and seeing things maybe I shouldn't have, you know, or maybe I should have, you know. So it's kind of like dancing and was always kind of something that was in the background. But then after I got into it, it was all about me. It was for myself. It was my healing tool, my mechanism for rebuilding my dignity, for rebuilding my confidence, rebuilding my ego, you know. And to the point where, you know, after I finished doing my work at Sheridan and you know, having some dreams to become like an animator, I noticed that the biggest thing about my personality and about my experience in that school was that although I loved the work and I loved the people, I wasn't that student who was carrying around a sketchbook everywhere. I was a student who was like in my free time and you know, having natural talent and doing the work, but I would be practicing in the hallways, breaking, and people would be asking me, oh, can you teach me, can you teach me, can you teach me, you know? So my Sheridan, like homies, they remember. And I wasn't allowed to dance in the mall. And you know, there was times where that was one of the only places we could go, is the mall and the little nooks and crannies, you know, in the little corners and the hidden hallways in the old Square One mall that don't really exist anymore because the mall's changed. But you know, trying to find places to break, getting physically manhandled by security and pulled out, like imagine, right? Just for dancing. Being in high school and the vice principal, you know, straight up like threatening you that you're gonna get suspended or expelled because you're dancing. That is whack. So like, I was tired of it. I saw a lot of people walking around, perpetuating stereotypes, dressing like they're hip hop, like acting like b-boy, but they don't know anything about it. They don't MC, they don't write graph, they don't break, they don't DJ, they know nothing about the history. So for me, that was frustrating. I was like, this stuff has become part of my culture for 5 years at the point. So 5-6 years, I was so into it and like, you know, almost elitist about it. And I just wanted to do something. I wanted to affect change in my environment, in my community. So I went back to Sheridan. I went to Davis this time, and I did community outreach and development. And at the time, Brian Dwyer, he was the program director, and he constructed a nice 2-year program in that school. And it was a very versatile program that resembled social work, but it gave us an extra added scope and lens towards program development and international community development and understanding about how to facilitate groups in unique ways. So for me, I absorbed as much knowledge as I could in my mid-20s from that programming, and I got an internship with the city of Mississauga. So I started working with the old arts unit, which eventually, you know, now is considered culture division. But I was part of like that old school team, and you know, I started my first events through the city of Mississauga, the Word Project, which was in 2004 inside Mississauga Valley's Community Center after they renovated it to what it looks like today. And it was the first event of its kind in Mississauga history. We brought 27 artists from all over the GTA, multifaceted artists, you know, MCs and visual artists and breakers and graffiti writers all in one space. We had a whole workshop portion. Then the middle of the event was kind of a gallery portion. like develop, stopping, showing, and then fixing, like actually having it nice. And that was a contribution made by Sheikh Qatari, who went on to create the Manifesto Festival, which a lot of people know about. So the early foundations are like here in Mississauga, and no one really knows, right? So it went all the way there. And you know, the end of the word project, we saw like Ill Scarlet, Measure One, The Junction, Melon Grove Band, Ultra Magnus, like, you know, groups that were signed and are like really well known, whether they're around today or not. We had a whole Ryerson fashion show and a concert, and it drew like a lot of people, and a lot of people got inspired by that, you know, a whole generation of people. So after that, you know, I started to teach inside, you know, the Valleys and Burnouts Community Center, and hitting, I think, a total of maybe 7 different community centers across the city. You know, I was like, I think art education and community work is something that I want to pursue a little bit more. And I started getting more into teaching all city, this idea of teaching all city. I wanted to teach in Scarborough, I wanted to teach in Toronto, and I wanted to teach in Mississauga, and I wanted to be somebody who was covering all these different spaces and planting seeds. And sure enough, I planted those seeds, and years later, a lot of students that I had developed, they grew and they matured, and now my crew is 5-6 generations deep. And a lot of the guys in my crew, who when I met them as they were 16 years old, are now young men, and they're like Canadian champions, international champions, like the best in Canada. I can say that with like full confidence, and you know, I say it humbly. I really do, you know, because I sacrificed a lot, we put a lot, and to see these guys exceed and pass like whatever it is that I did, or the guys in the crew that we started before us, is like, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, you know. And I feel glad, I have gladness to know that I was able to contribute to the journey with my life's work, because it's my life's work. I got educated in this work, I put the time down in this work, and I made it happen. I collaborated with many different people to make this type of work viable, not only to make everything that I taught to be free, you know, like for the most part, a lot of things that I did had been accessible to the community at a very low cost or for free. And a lot of the jams that I've done have often been for free, and I just found ways to get funded, whether it's been municipal funding or, you know, funding through like provincial support, or, you know, national funding, federal funding. Found ways, or even just straight up business exchanges, you know, to make sure that I can pay my way to go to university. Eventually I went to York, and I got my bachelor's in fine arts with honors. And a lot of the touring that I did with Blueprint and work that I did with Unity Charity was able to kind of, you know, I was able to acquire funds to pay for myself to go through school, you know, live only as an artist. You know, Unity Charity is another organization that I'm working with since 2009. And then 3 years ago, I became program coordinator on a part-time basis. But I was running my programming out of City Hall, and it was a very successful program. It was the flagship of the charity. You know, overall, in 3 years, we had 700 participants. We had facilitators from all over the world, from France and UK, from Mexico, and from Japan, and from Korea. Like, people have expansive networks. A lot of people came to the space, able to share knowledge with the youth. We had about, on average, you know, 15 to 20 participants every week on a Thursday, learning for free inside City Hall. And you know, that funding was, the whole program was made possible through funding Trillium Foundation. So Trillium, in partnership with Nexus Youth Services and City of Mississauga and Unity Charity, we all came together, and you know, I constructed the program, and it was a large success. So stuff like that has allowed me to kind of continually focus on this chapter of my life in community work. And when the hub finished last June, I kind of closed the book on certain type of community work. And although I've done Seven Samurai street poetry event, and I've contributed to the community, that's my constant kind of contribution. And now I teach classes more privately, and my business is starting to flourish and thrive a little bit more. It's time for me to kind of pass on the torch. So a lot of the people that I've taught and doing the things, I'm trying to encourage them to kind of start building more in the community in that way. And although I will always contribute to the community and development in some ways, right now I'm focused on myself as a professional art educator, as an artist with my own business, and trying to sustain myself that way, and also looking for other things that appeal to my interest in terms of full-time work and stuff like that, which could be relatable or not, but I got goals for a family now and all that, so I want to be able to go in my old age as an older adult, as an elder, as someone who didn't compromise their art practice for anything and just maintain staying as an artist, but I also want to be an older and an adult and an elder who has a sustainable life as well. So I'm learning a lot about business right now, learning a lot about marketing right now, learning a lot about how to be a consultant right now, being a coach. Even though I've been coaching for 15 years, I'm learning more about these whole realms, this whole thing, which is cool. It's exciting. Evolution.
Can you tell me a little bit more about Unity Charity? Actually, like what specifically? Because when I tried to get your information from Mississauga Arts Council, they gave me your Unity Charity email, to which I tried to reach out, but I don't really know much about that. Could you?
Right. So Unity was started by a good friend of mine, Michael Prosserman. And he started it, I believe, in 2007. And Michael started this whole idea of Unity Charity out of high school and then York University, same school that I went to eventually. And the intention and the whole work behind Unity is empowering and building strong leaders in the community, utilizing hip-hop art practice as a tool through after-school programs, through leadership programs, through events, and through training. So it has grown for the last 12 years or so into a robust charity with a high reputation. It has served hundreds of thousands of people all across the country. It's got programming all across the way, and we have continued some of the hub programming, the All Elements hub programming of the coordination position that I was previously doing. So there's another year for it, a seed fund. So right now I'm facilitating that for about 9 weeks as a facilitator. But overall, Unity has been pretty interesting because it's a way to introduce people into the culture through the power of personal story and through the power of advocating mental health through its theory of change, which is a strategic plan to focus on all its cultivated art practices through hip hop in the classroom, through art education, but still always having a mental health piece woven into all the lessons, And it's been a breath of my work for a long time, to not only teach the craft and dance, but to also put a lot of other in-depth reflective things inside of the learning of the craft. So it ends up being kind of like the dance is a mask for what you're really learning. And it's funny because now that I'm looking around and people are only starting to kind of catch up on the theme and the concepts, while people that I've been working with for a long time have about 15 years, and the people that I've learned from even like more experience than I have, much more about how to integrate this idea of like pedagogical learning systems that are holistic while teaching an art practice or theme. Like people are just starting to get on it now, just starting to talk about mental health now, but it's like you guys are a little late. Well, it's never too late, but it's like there's people that are in the backyard crying for support to do this type of stuff. So I think if anything, it's a lesson. And if anyone sees this interview, it's a lesson that you should pay attention to what's happening on your own backyard, because then you're gonna all the stuff that you're gonna figure out 10 years later. It's been said, So why don't you get those people who are really doing this work and cultivating the work correctly, and nurture them so that they can do it, stronger, so that you're not ahead by 10 years, you're ahead by 20 years, you're ahead by 30 years. You're impacting 7 generations instead of just 1 generation. So when I started Full Step Sauga to complement this idea of like, okay, well, I am an art educator, I am a speaker, I am an advocate, I am a producer. The idea was to encourage people to step outside of their comfort zones, past the event horizon of their experience and learning art and about themselves, and to go full step into something that is a continual story in their lives, that will impact not only themselves but other people for a long time. Now,
there's 2 things that I wanted to ask. One, because I didn't ask it earlier, and I wanted to elaborate a little bit further, so this is going to be the Frankenstein edit portion of it, where I might put it in earlier. You mentioned before that when you were part of Ground Illusion, that it wasn't just breakers, it was, you know, musicians, MCs, there were street artists. Could you possibly describe the dynamic of what made your crew, or what makes a crew in this sort of modern era?
Wow, okay, so well, with my crew, because we spent a lot of time together as friends and trying to decipher and discover, figure out the vocabulary of this dance and to create our own voice through it, we became like a family. Crew in general is kind of like that, you know, it's your comrades, like your team, you know, and it's like the mob, you know, like you're in it, you're really in it, and you don't leave it that easily, and you become really so into it that it becomes addictive. And what made our crew very unique and special is the fact that because the base of the crew is from Mississauga, we could go to Toronto and hit up an event, and then, you know, make noise as in, you know, make an impression, and then come out of the jam and come back to Sauga and like nurture ourselves in an isolated environment away from distractions and just absolutely focus on what we were going to do next time we get out. And we were like, everyone in the crew was so different and unique. You know, I was someone who was like really into musicality, into dancing, into, you know, with an aggressive attack and approach. And you had other guys in the crew who were like really into dynamic spins, and other people who were in the crew were like, their character was like bananas, like on another level, and other people in the crew were extremely intricate, you know. And then it's like that reputation that we had as a crew is that we were all so very different types of people, but we were coming together, and our conviction and the pillars and foundation of what our crew was and is, skill, commitment, desire, creativity, our motto and our mantra and the way that we conduct ourselves, that gave us like a certain type of poise and a kind of integrity with every time we would come out anywhere. We would perform on stage, you know, opening up for Melly Mel and the Furious Five, you know, being on stage, you know, before like Talib Kweli or Nas, or, you know, like throwing down, jumping on stage with KRS-One, you know, like performing in real venues and real places with real people, real well-known people. Our crew was always very distinct because not only did we have amazing chemistry, but we all, again, were very diverse, but everything that we did in terms of our aesthetic throwing down, doing our dance or our art forms, all contained those four qualities. And although it made our frequency similar, it made our aesthetic look varied between each other. So no one person in the crew looked the same way, which is remarkable. And in crews, a lot of crews these days, everyone looks the same. You know, a lot of people look the same. They dance the same. And I mean, there's something wrong with that. If people like that and it's their thing, cool. But that wasn't us. That didn't turn us on. For us, it was like, we're like Voltron. We want to have like different parts of the body come together. And when we come together, we're unstoppable. You know, and individually we're strong as well, but together is like another level. And I think that's what made our crew really powerful, is our character, you know, our approach, our conviction, our sensibility, our artistic sensibility, you know, our aesthetic, always trying to create new things, to be original, to honor everything that came before us, you know, respect all the older crews like, you know, like Bag of Tricks and Boogie Brats and Top Notch and Supernaturals and Intricate and all the other crews that came before us that really paved the foundation. We wanted to acknowledge them, tribute them, but we wanted to be our own island, which is what Ground Illusions became and what it is. We're our own island, and we're from Mississauga. We represent Mississauga, but we have membership in Brampton, in Toronto, in Ajax, in, you know, in Gifu, Japan, in Taiwan, in Korea. You know, I think a lot of crews today, breaking today in general is a lot different than when I started, because not only have movements and, you know, techniques evolved, accessibility to these things have also changed as well. Like before, the best thing that we could get was, you know, renting Beat Street at Blockbuster, you know, and like trying to study the 5-minute clip of Rocksteady crew versus New York City Breakers in the battle, which is a classic clip, you know, or turning on Rap City and seeing Bag of Tricks throwing down in the Rap City intro and catching it at 3 seconds and recording it on the VCR, putting it back and pushing the pause button to make the tracking, and then you have to fill the rest with your imagination, right? Now you can just go on YouTube and like look up tutorials and see, like a jam happens, you see the jam literally the same night on the internet or the next day. While when I started breaking, the jam that happened, you see it on a cassette that was dubbed multiple times, and you got it at a shop downtown, you know, and it was 2 years old already. By the time you see it, everything's already outdated, you know. So it was very different than the way things are now, you know. Everyone's cross-pollinated in their styles. Like before you could go to different cities and countries and you could tell people break by the way that the style is. And like now, although you see the approach is different culturally, a lot of the physical movements and stuff are starting to kind of blend and look very similar. It's almost getting harder to tell someone from like Ukraine from someone in Korea, like in terms of like what they're able to do. But you do see like differences, you know, like the Ukrainian guys or the Russian dancers are really raw in their style, and they're like doing a lot of moves that resemble their traditional dancing, you know. And in the Korean or the Japanese breakers, like you see things that signify qualities of their own culture and the way that they approach the dance too. So it still remains, but the technical aspect and the scale and the range of the vocabulary is now being shared very, very frequently on a daily basis, like literally, like moment to moment. It's ridiculous.
Is there part of Canadian culture that because you mentioned how people in Korea have part of their tradition, and is there any of that sort of in Canadian breakdance?
Oh, big time, yeah. Canadian breaking is like world renowned because we're so diverse as a community, you know, and it really reflects. Like Toronto breakers have put breaking on the map for everyone. Like we have, like I said, like these are Migas' shoes. This guy's from Brampton, and he's like one of the Michael Jordans of breaking. You know what I'm saying? And Gizmo, who came to the jam, which I mentioned. Gizmo is, you know, the main guy from Bag of Tricks, who's a household name. You know, he's like Wayne Gretzky. You know, and it's like these people are from here, like right here in the GTA, and no one knows it. And it's like you should know, you know. And the thing that makes Canadian breaking so ill is the fact that we as a people, as Canadians, and how we're different than Americans is like, you know, we're encouraged to practice our own culture. A lot of times people identify themselves, oh, I am from wherever their heritage or their forefathers from. And usually say that first. They say, oh yeah, but I'm Canadian. You know, whilst in the States, like I'm American first, and then you gotta say, oh yeah, my heritage is. In Canada, it's almost the other way around. It's like you're free to practice you, to be yourself, and to celebrate whatever it is that you do and who you are, openly and freely, and it's fine. And this country is free in that way. I mean, I'm glad it's evolving, because this country has a really dark history too, you know, and how we've treated our indigenous communities and then some, right? But the qualities that make Canadian breaking so distinct is the fact that the population of Canadians are here are usually people who are, you know, about who they are in their culture, and at the same time they're people who are like open-minded enough to create their own identity because they want to stand out. You know, they want to be different than, you know, we want to be different than people from the United States. We want to be different from people in England than we are, you know. And Toronto breaking, I can speak from the lens of being a Toronto breaker, although I've been around Canada. You know, Toronto has like a heavy like influence, especially the hip hop scene, like West Indian influence. You know, people speak patois and they're like, and their slang. You know, there's a lot of you know, people of Asian descent, Asian community breaking. Whilst before that wasn't that common. You know, and you have in doing so that inspired like a whole world of people, and the way that we approach life in general. I mean, just look at the folklore and the kind of way that we do things on a contemporary basis as Canadians in general, and then you look at the breaking, it's just like, wow, it's the same. There's a lot of commonalities there, you know. Strive for good quality, strive to be original, strive to express who we are naturally and organically, and we try to, you know, say something that hasn't been said before, make contributions. Canadians have made contributions on every field, from medicine to physics to math to constructing, like building, to art, to musicianship, to dancing, to breaking. Of course, it's not far-fetched. It's really true, and breaking is no exception. And I felt that really for the first time. I did a TEDx talk in Vancouver about 3 years ago, and I'm literally talking, beside a rocket scientist dude who's making like a camera that can see from space, like see your cell phone, and I'm like, why the heck am I talking on stage, after this person? And well, because what we do is compelling story, and it represents something that is, the best within all of us, a high level of competency in what you do, a depth in what you do, something that is applicable to the world itself, and with his dance, it definitely gives us that. And yeah, I don't know if I answered your question. I start kind of like going in.
Trust me, the more you elaborate, the better it is, just because I get a wide view of what your personality is, and cool. I can figure out where exactly I want to take the narrative. Most likely I'm going to upload the entire interview at a later date, but I want to make sure that I get the stuff for the primary event as well as the stuff for the profile, and then I'll probably upload the entire interview at a later time.
That's cool.
One last thing that I absolutely want to, and then I'll ask you like a silly question later.
Sure.
What advice or sage guidance do you want to give to those that are curious through this interview about getting into the break scene, whether that's wherever they're watching this from all over the world? Like what would you recommend?
Have fun. Fun, joy, and respect people that came before you. Respect is a two-way street, of course, but respect the knowledge and the sacrifice people made before you, and try to understand that you don't know everything, and even people who've been doing this for 30, 40 years still don't know everything. The people who are the best at this still consider themselves students, are often the most humble. So humble yourself out, have a good time, don't get wrapped up in politics, and just try to be the best person you can be. And I think for the long term as well, take care of your body, take care of your finances. If you want to be a professional dancer, super dope, but also think about all the things you can do, how you can transfer those skills elsewhere, you know what I'm saying? Get an education, educate yourself, go to school, get an apprenticeship, do something. And dancing is always there for you, no matter what. Take a break for a little while, not train as intensively, doesn't mean you quit, doesn't mean you gave up. Again, it's a cultivated thing, it's a culture. So, as long as you're having fun, you're respecting the past, then you can contribute something that's going to impact the future, and you can have your own voice, and you can really impact the world around you, change the world. You can contribute something that people will be talking about that will impact 7 generations, absolutely guaranteed. And don't think one-dimensional about your dance as well. Consider how your dance can do other things. You want to learn a language? Great. Speak the language. What are you going to do with the language? Cool, you can speak. Now what? So think about that. Think about what your dance can do for other people other than just yourself. Think about what your dancing can do that's going to serve your community. Think about how it's going to serve you and the people directly around you. And think about how you can enjoy it, like really enjoy it while you can do it. And the fruit of that stuff is like so beneficial. Like it trips me out how incredible this dance is in general. So if you want to get into breaking, yes, also understand that people are people, human beings are human beings. So no matter what community or scene you get involved with, there's always going to be, a lot of negative things that come with it, because humans are, we're neither bad or good. We're a spectrum. So you're going to run into envy, you're going to run into jealousy, you're going to run into disdain, you're going to run into challenging situations, and maybe people aren't cool with you all the time, or maybe you're trying to find your way through the darkness, and it's difficult, right? And if you want to, being real, if you want to get into breaking or the hip hop scene, you're going into a whole world. So the best thing I can say if it's an advice, it's more like an option. So you can have an option. Either you enjoy it, have a good time with it, and try to do those things that I had mentioned, like, you know, learning about the history, contributing something cool, doing something fun with it, fresh with it, and thinking about your life and future as a human being first, as a citizen. Or you can get caught up in the rat race and get caught up in the human condition in politics. So make a choice. So I'd say if you focus on maybe the first thing, you can really enjoy and be fulfilled by it and grow with it in a great way, or you can get trapped in it because it's such a difficult dance. It requires someone to be so like in it and so disciplined that it consumes a lot of the life because it's a culture. So it's like, you know, learn to walk the balance, you know, kind of like a Jedi Knight, you know, you gotta like have a good balance or else it's gonna bring a lot of hard times. And if you're loving this stuff and you get hurt, you know, I've been hurt many times, and it's not like hardcore injuries, but it's enough to like, you know, bug you. You're like, oh man, I can't do this. Or if, you know, you live like this as a profession, you get hurt, you still gotta show up for work, you gotta teach, or you got to have someone sub for you, and then you're not making money, you know? So there's a lot of realistic things that people gotta consider, you know? And again, with the health thing, how are you taking care of your health, physical health, spiritual health, mental health? So definitely I encourage everyone and anyone to get into it because you're so free to be yourself. You can create really great things, be empowered and take ownership, but at the same time, like anything, too much of it and overdoing it is not good for you. You know? You can't take too much sugar, you get sick. You know, too much medicines, you get sick. Same thing.
Ross, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview.
Yeah, no problem, man. You're a great interviewer.
We went sort of crazy. This is pretty much the end. I did want to ask you though, because you went to Japan, and as someone who has tattoos, how much did you possibly get for that? Because there's you walk around with tattoos, they're gonna think that you're like Yakuza
or something.
Yeah.
Well, you know, my wife kind of is always about me, always on me about this kind of stuff. She's like, because you know, I want to have a lot of tattoos. I love art on the body. I love stories on the body. It's something that I find very appealing, and I'm very picky about those things. But just in the society overall, is like they have the way that they view it, and they have a reason why they view it that way. As a foreigner, I try to just be myself and at the same time respect whatever it is that's in front of me. So it's not like I'm trying to flash off my tattoos to people or whatever. Fortunately, people give me the grace as being a gaijin, and they like, you know, they're like, oh, he's got tattoos, not from here. So, you know, if I was Japanese, maybe it'd be a lot different. Actually, it would be a lot different. You know, like I'd probably be in a different tier of society or way of being and way of moving about in my life and career life, if I had a lot of tattoos being there. But as a foreigner, as a Canadian going there, I don't get sweated. No one really bugs me about it, you know.
Yeah, because I was planning on actually making the jump across the pond roughly about 2-3 years ago, teaching English over there or whatever, and I was just taking a look going, oh god, if I get tattoos, I'll be one of those gaijins who can't do anything, pretty much.
Maybe you can't go into onsen unless certain places are cool with it, but you know, more and more I'm seeing more Japanese people get tattoos. Like slowly the stigma's kind of going away. Of course, the older generation will never stop, but there's a new generation that's coming up, and like more than ever, I've seen Japanese people with tattoos all over the place.
Well, it's the cultural traditions, because you'll go into some place like I'm trying to remember. Samoans, which are all about like using tattoos as a form of telling your story, your growth, journey into from boy into man, and then you go to Japan where it's like you get tattoos, it's criminality, it's Yakuza, it's all of that. So either way, thank you so much for your time.
No problem, man. No problem, dude. Yeah, thank you for coming to the space.